Welcome back everyone. How did you get on with variables? They're not too difficult really, are they? As soon as you start declaring them and printing them out, they become quite easy to work with and understand. As you can tell, my cold has gotten slightly worse and moved to my throat, and I've also got this bit of an eye infection. But other than that, that's enough about me. Let's crack on with the lesson. So in this lesson we're going to start learning all about methods, and if you've never heard of what a method is before, don't worry about it. It's very similar to a function in another language. So to begin with, we're going to create a void method, which is just a method that doesn't return anything, and then we're going to create a method that does return something, and then we're also going to start looking at parameters as well and how we can pass arguments into methods. So let's get started. So let's start with void methods, which, as we've just said, are methods that don't return a value. So I'm going to remove a lot of the code that we did before. I'm just going to leave these two variables, my pet name and my pet description. So I'm going to remove all of this stuff, which is going to make all this go red. So we're just left with my pet name, my pet description, and we're printing them out. Now let's look at this bit of code. Now say if we had to do this bit of code in lots of different places on our application, then I wouldn't want to copy and paste this code all throughout the application. I'd like to have it in one place, and if I run that code in that one place, it's going to do this job for me. So let's look at moving this code into a method that's going to do the job. Before we do that though, I actually want to point out that we've already got a method on the screen, and it's called the main method. So let's look at that here. So we've got the name of the method, which is main. We've got whether the method returns something. In this case it doesn't, so we mark it as void. I'm going to ignore the public static bit at the moment because we're going to go into that into a bit more detail when we start doing the object-oriented stuff. But the main important parts of this are to look at. The word void here means that this method doesn't return anything, and we've also got the name of the method. So let's create our own method. Ideally I want a method that's going to run this bit of code up here for me, and a sensible name for the method might be called print cat description, let's say. So I'm going to, similarly to the main method, I'm going to do public static, and again, let's not worry about these words for the time being. It's going to be a void method because it's not going to return any values, it's just going to print some values to the screen, and we're going to give it a name called print pet description. And it's not going to take any arguments, so we're going to just close these braces and just declare it like this. Now that means I can take this code from up here, I can put it into our method, and now if I want to run that code in our app, I can just call print pet description, and let's see what happens if I call it twice and run it. So there we go. We've got Penny, my name's Cat, my cat's name is Penny and she's 11 years old, and we've seen that printed twice. And that's because Java's going to line 4, it's then running the code in this method, which prints it out twice, and then it's going to line 5 and doing exactly the same thing. So void methods, simple. You call it void, you declare it as void, you give it a name, and then you just put your code in the method that you want to run, easy. So with that being said, let's have a look at methods that actually return something. So let's say we wanted a method that just returned the cat's name. So very similar to the last example, we're going to do public static, and instead of doing void here, we're going to want to return a string because the cat's name is a string. So we're going to say string here. And this can be any variable type. When you declare a method that returns something, you just need to say what type of variable it returns. I'm going to call the method name getPetName because that seems like a sensible name for a method that's going to return a pet's name. And I'm going to take the code we did here and now move it to this getPetName method because it seems to be more sensible in here. So we don't need to print it out anymore, but what we do need to do is return a value here. So you can see I've got a Java's basically saying I've got an error because you're saying, hey, here's a method that should return a string, but it's not. You haven't returned anything. So what we need to do is return my pet name. Easy as that. So with methods in Java, you have to declare, methods in Java that return something, you have to say what they return, and then you have to return that thing. Notice here I couldn't return the number 12. That's going to give me an error because the number 12 is an integer. So I can remove this line as well. I press Control and Y then to delete the line. Tell you what, let's just go back and not use the keyboard shortcut because that gets a bit confusing when you're watching. So let's just delete that line. And I'm going to return penny here. And that's going to be fine because penny is a string. So up here now, or anywhere in this code, I can call, just like before, get pet name. And because pet name returns a string, I can say string pet name is equal to get pet name. And now if I print this out, we'll see that pet name will still be equal to penny. So let's run this. And yeah, pet's name is still penny. Brilliant. So let's create another method that returns something, but this time let's return an integer. So I'm going to do same thing, public static integer, but instead of return the pet's name this time, let's return the pet's age. Get pet age. Make sure you spell static completely wrong. Cool, and again it's moaning at me because I'm not actually returning anything. So let's return my cat's age, which as we know from the previous lesson is 11. And we can do exactly the same thing here. We can say integer pet's age is equal to get pet age. And if we print that out, well, you already know what's going to happen now at this point, don't you? Print out the pet age, and we get 11. Simple. So brilliant. We've seen the methods that can return things. They can return strings, they can return integers, they can return absolutely anything in a method. And it's as simple as that, just declaring the type of thing that you want to return, the name of the method, and then actually returning something. Brilliant. We've looked at void methods, we've looked at methods that return something. Let's look at methods that actually take parameters, which means that we can pass variables into the method. So let's create a method that will print the cat's description, but will allow us to pass the cat's name into the method. So it's going to be a void method because we're not going to be returning anything from this method. We're just going to be printing stuff to the console. So we're not going to be returning any variables. So it's going to be public static void. And I tell you what, let's comment out this method so we can forget about that. And we'll create this one, print pet description. But this time, instead of there being nothing in these little brackets, we're going to say this method is going to take a string. It's going to take the string of the pet name. And in the method body, we just want to print out the pet name. So system.out.println pet name. And now all this means is that when we call this method, we can actually pass it a pet name. So what I can do here, let's get rid of these. If I call print pet description, and let's give the pet's name of Harry. Let's create another pet called Sam. And you'll see we can keep calling this same method with different arguments. And this argument will get passed to this line here. So let's just run it. It'll make more sense when we run it. Cool. So now we see Penny, 11, Harry, Sam. So we're still calling get pet name, get pet age. We're returning Penny, but now with our print pet description, we're actually passing an argument of the cat's name into the method, which is then being printed. So you can pass multiple parameters into methods, and they don't just have to be the same type. So let's pass an integer in as well. Integer pet age. And we can also print the pet age out. And now if we run the same code again, it's moaning at us now because we've given it another argument. We've said this method takes a string and this method also takes an integer, but we've only given it a string. So we need to give these cats some ages as well. Let's say Harry is 4 and Sam is 6. And let's run that again and we should see the values change now. Cool, Harry 4, Sam 6. So that's all there really is to methods at the moment. There's a lot deeper stuff we're going to uncover with classes and that sort of stuff. But for the moment, that gives us a decent enough base to work with. Like I said, in further lessons, things will become more clear and we'll be uncovering more stuff. But the main takeaways are methods can return something, methods can be void, methods can have arguments, and you can basically do any sort of manner of stuff within the method bodies. So I think that wraps us up today for methods. We will be going back to a lot of this stuff in later lessons, especially discussing what like the public and the private keywords mean and like the keyword static. We sort of glossed over that a bit today, but they will definitely be covered in later lessons. Hope you found this informative, hope you've liked it. If you've enjoyed it and you want me to make more of this content, please drop me a like and give me a subscribe. Take care everyone, bye bye.